They called her the town skeleton. Lila Hart, the seamstress too frail to matter, too poor to escape, too broken to fight back. When the golden boy of Dry Creek handed her a job offer that was really a death sentence, everyone expected her to collapse on the dusty road to Ridgefire Ranch. They expected Cole Maddox, the scarred monster in the hills, to send her running. They expected her to stay small, stay quiet, stay nothing, but what Lila Hart did with a dying horse, a poisoned water supply, and a town full of cowards would turn every expectation into ash. If you're watching from somewhere in this big world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far Lila's story travels. And if you believe the underestimated can become unstoppable, hit that like button and stay until the end. The Texas summer of 1882 didn't ask permission before it killed. It simply waited, patient as a rattlesnake, for something weak enough to take. Lila Hart had been weak her entire life. At least that's what Dry Creek had decided about her. 23 years old and built like a bird with hollow bones, she moved through the town's dusty streets with the kind of careful silence that came from years of being stepped on. Her dresses hung loose on a frame that no amount of cornbread could fill out. Her wrists looked like they'd snap if someone shook her hand too hard. The purple shadows under her eyes had become permanent fixtures, carved deep by nights spent finishing sewing orders while her father drank away her wages at the saloon. "Careful, Lila, wind might blow you clean to Oklahoma," someone would call out whenever she walked past the general store. "Maybe she's part grasshopper, all legs, no meat." The laughter always followed. It had a sound Lila knew better than her own heartbeat, casual, thoughtless, the kind of cruelty that didn't even recognize itself as cruel. She'd learned not to respond. Responding meant engaging, and engaging meant making yourself a bigger target. So she kept her eyes down, kept moving, kept surviving in the only way she knew how, by being so quiet, so small, that maybe one day they'd forget she existed at all. But Grant Harlow never forgot. Grant was Dry Creek's golden boy, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of easy smile that made people trust him even when they shouldn't. His father owned half the town, and Grant had inherited both the charm and the cruelty that came with that kind of power. He had a particular talent for finding the weakest link in any room and pulling it until something broke. And Lila Hart was the weakest link he'd ever found. It was late afternoon when he cornered her outside Mrs. Brennan's dress shop, where Lila worked 16-hour days for pennies that rarely made it past her father's liquor tab. The heat was suffocating, the kind that turned the air thick and heavy, made breathing feel like drowning on dry land. Lila had just finished hemming 3 dresses and was heading toward the boarding house she shared with 5 other women in a room meant for 2. "Lila Hart," Grant's voice was smooth as silk pulled over broken glass. "Just the girl I was looking for." She stopped, not because she wanted to, but because Grant Harlow wasn't someone you could ignore. He stood between her and the boarding house, flanked by 2 of his friends, Jake Calloway and Tom Brenner, both cut from the same cruel cloth as their ringleader. "Mr. Harlow," Lila's voice came out thin, careful. "I've got work to finish." "I've got work for you too," Grant interrupted, that smile spreading wider. "Real work, the kind that pays." Lila's heart sank. She knew that smile. It was the same one he'd worn when he'd convinced old Mr. Peterson to invest in a cattle scheme that left him bankrupt. The same one he'd used when he'd talked Mary Sullivan into believing he'd marry her before leaving her reputation in tatters. "I appreciate the offer, but $5, Grant said, and the number hung in the air like bait on a hook. $5. That was more than Lila made in 2 weeks, more than enough to pay her father's tab, buy herself a week of peace, maybe even save a little for the day she finally found the courage to leave this town behind. For what? The words came out before Lila could stop them. Grant's smile turned sharp. "Simple errand. You know Ridgefire Ranch?" Everyone knew Ridgefire Ranch. It sat 5 miles outside town, up in the hills where the scrub brush turned to pine and the air tasted like distance. It belonged to Cole Maddox, a man whose name was spoken in the same tone people used for ghost stories and disasters. Cole Maddox was a monster, according to Dry Creek. 7 years ago, he'd returned from some unnamed war with his face carved up like a butcher's block, and his soul even more ruined. He'd buried his wife within a month of coming home. Cholera, they said, though some whispered darker things. Since then, he'd lived alone on that ranch like a hermit, only coming to town twice a year for supplies. The few people who'd seen him up close described a man more scar tissue than skin, with eyes that had forgotten how to look at anything soft. "I know it," Lila said carefully. "Cole's got a prize mare up there, Ruby, worth more than this whole damn town. But she's sick, and that stubborn bastard won't let anyone near her to help. Won't come to town, won't answer letters." Grant pulled a folded piece of paper from his vest pocket. "But you're good with animals, aren't you? I've seen you with Mrs. Chen's goat, that mean thing that bites everyone but you." It was true. Lila had a way with frightened creatures, maybe because she understood what it felt like to expect cruelty from every hand extended toward you. "Mr. Harlow, I don't know anything about horses." "You know about gentleness," Grant said, and for a moment his voice almost sounded sincere. Almost. "That mare needs someone with a soft touch. Cole's too rough with her, too impatient. But someone like you," he held out the folded paper. "Give him this note. Help with the mare. $5 when you get back." Easy money, Lila. Behind Grant, Jake and Tom were grinning like wolves. Lila looked at the note, at Grant's too friendly smile, at the $5 that would solve so many problems. She should have said no. Should have heard the trap snapping shut. Should have recognized the setup for what it was. But Lila Hart was tired. Tired of being hungry. Tired of her father's debts. Tired of sewing until her fingers bled for wages that disappeared like smoke. And $5, 5 whole dollars, represented something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. "I'll need to leave early tomorrow," she said quietly, "before the heat gets too bad." Grant's smile could have lit fires. "Smart girl. Dawn it is." He pressed the note into her palm, and his fingers lingered just long enough to make her skin crawl. "Don't let us down, Lila. Dry Creek's counting on you." The laughter started before she was even out of earshot. Lila left before sunrise, when the world was still gray and cool, and the stars were fading like scattered salt. She'd packed light because she didn't have much to pack: a canteen of water, a piece of hardtack wrapped in cloth, and the sealed note Grant had given her. She wore her most practical dress, though practical still meant thin cotton that would offer no protection against the sun once it rose in earnest. The walk to Ridgefire Ranch was 5 miles. 5 miles didn't sound like much. People walked 5 miles all the time. But Lila wasn't people. She was a half-starved seamstress who'd spent yesterday hunched over a sewing table for 14 hours straight. Her legs were already shaking before she reached the edge of town. By the time the sun crested the horizon, she was sweating through her dress. By the 3rd mile, her vision was starting to blur. The Texas landscape spread out around her like a punishment. Endless scrub brush, scattered mesquite trees offering shade too sparse to matter, and heat that rose from the earth in visible waves. The dirt road stretched ahead like a promise that kept breaking, each rise revealing nothing but more empty distance. Lila's canteen was already half empty. She'd rationed carefully, but the heat was relentless, sucking moisture from her body faster than she could replace it. Her lips cracked. Her head throbbed. Her legs felt like they were filled with sand instead of muscle. $5, she told herself. $5. You can do this. But doubt crept in with every stumbling step. Why would Cole Maddox need her? Why would Grant Harlow, who'd never shown her anything but contempt, suddenly offer her real money for simple work? Why did Jake and Tom look at her like she was a joke they were all in on except her? The 4th mile nearly broke her. Lila's legs gave out twice, sending her to her knees in the dirt. The second time, she stayed down for a full minute, her vision swimming with black spots, her lungs heaving in air that felt like breathing fire. Everything hurt. Her feet were blistering inside her worn boots. Her head was pounding so hard she could barely think. The sun was a physical weight pressing down on her shoulders, trying to drive her into the ground like a tent stake. She could die out here. That thought arrived with crystal clarity. She could collapse on this empty road and no one would find her until the buzzards had already started their work. But turning back meant walking another 4 miles through this heat, and it meant going back to Dry Creek empty-handed, admitting failure, facing Grant's smile and the town's laughter, and another 16-hour shift at Mrs. Brennan's shop. So Lila got up. She took another drink from her canteen, just enough to wet her mouth, and kept walking. The 5th mile was a blur of heat and pain and sheer stubborn refusal to quit. When Ridgefire Ranch finally appeared through the shimmer of heat waves, Lila thought she might be hallucinating. But no, there it was, real as bone. A sprawling property with a main house built from dark wood and stone, several outbuildings, and acres of fenced pasture where a few horses grazed in the distance. Everything looked well-maintained but austere, like it belonged to someone who didn't believe in comfort. Lila's instructions had been to head for the barn. She could see it now, a large structure painted red once upon a time, though the color had faded to rust under years of sun. She made it to the barn door before her legs finally quit. Lila caught herself against the weathered wood, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her vision tunneled. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the door frame. But she was here. She'd made it. 5 miles through hell, and she'd made it. Inside the barn, she could hear movement. The shuffle of hooves, a low, pained whicker. Lila pushed the door open and stepped into shadow. The barn was cooler, at least. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the dimness, and she made out rows of empty stalls, equipment hanging on walls, the smell of hay and horse and something else, something sour and wrong. The sick smell was coming from the last stall on the right. Lila walked toward it on trembling legs, one hand trailing along the stall doors to keep herself upright. When she reached the source of the smell, she looked over the half door and her heart broke. The mare inside was beautiful, or had been. She was a deep chestnut color with a white star on her forehead, the kind of horse that should have been sleek and proud. But she was standing with her head low, her whole body radiating misery. Her right foreleg was wrapped in filthy, blood-crusted bandages that looked like they hadn't been changed in days. The leg was swollen, hot to the touch even from a distance, and the smell, God, the smell was infection, deep and festering. "Ruby?" Lila whispered. The mare's ears flicked toward her voice, but she didn't lift her head. Lila's hands were already moving, reaching for the stall latch before her brain caught up. This horse needed help, needed it desperately. Whatever Grant's game was, whatever trap he'd set, none of it mattered as much as the suffering creature in front of her. She was halfway through the stall door when the voice came from behind her, low, rough, and absolutely not interested in company. "Step away from the horse." Lila froze. "I said step away." She turned slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. Cole Maddox stood in the barn entrance, backlit by the brutal Texas sun. He was exactly as large as the stories suggested, well over 6 feet, built like a man who'd spent his life doing hard labor. But it was his face that made Lila's breath catch. The left side was a roadmap of scar tissue, deep gouges that ran from his temple down to his jaw, like someone had tried to peel his face off and hadn't quite finished the job. His right eye was intact, a sharp, cold gray that seemed to look straight through her. The left was milky and sightless. He was holding a rifle, not pointing it at her exactly, but not exactly not pointing it either. Lila's voice came out as a croak. She swallowed hard, tried again. "I'm Lila Hart, from Dry Creek. I have a note." "I don't care about a note." Cole's voice was flat, emotionless. "I don't know you. I didn't send for you. You're trespassing. Grant Harlow sent me. He said, I know what Grant Harlow says. He's a liar and a snake." Cole took a step forward and Lila instinctively took a step back. "Whatever he told you was a lie. There's no job. No pay. This was a joke and you're the punchline." The words hit Lila like a fist. She pulled the sealed note from her pocket with shaking hands. "But he gave me this." "Open it." Lila's fingers fumbled with the seal. The paper unfolded. It was blank. Completely, utterly blank. The reality of it crashed over her like cold water. Grant had sent her on a 5-mile walk through lethal heat, knowing there was no job at the end of it, knowing she'd barely survived the journey, knowing Cole Maddox would turn her away, knowing she'd have to walk 5 miles back through even worse heat, with no water, no food, no rest. It was a death sentence wrapped in a joke. Lila's legs gave out. She didn't faint, she was too stubborn for that, but she went down hard, her knees hitting the barn floor, her whole body finally admitting what she'd been denying for the last hour. She was done. Finished. There was nothing left. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Cole's boots appeared in her line of vision. "When did you leave town?" "Dawn." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You walked the whole way?" "Yes." "In this heat?" "I didn't know." Lila's throat was so dry the words scraped. "I thought it was real work. I thought—" She couldn't finish. The humiliation was too complete. Cole made a sound that might have been disgust, though Lila couldn't tell if it was directed at her or Grant or the whole situation. Then he set the rifle aside and crouched down, a careful movement for a man his size. "Can you stand?" "I don't know." "Try." Lila tried. Her legs were useless, trembling violently. She made it about 3 inches off the ground before everything went sideways. Cole caught her before she hit the floor. His hands were enormous, rough with calluses, but surprisingly gentle. "Damn fool girl," he muttered, but there was no real heat in it. "Stay put." He returned a moment later with a tin cup full of water. "Slow sips, not too fast or you'll bring it all back up." Lila drank. The water tasted like salvation, cool, clean, perfect. She wanted to gulp it down, but Cole's warning kept her careful. Slow sips, one after another. "More?" he asked when she finished. She nodded. He brought her 3 more cups, watching her with that single sharp eye while she drank. When she'd finally had enough, some of the shaking in her hands had eased. "Thank you," Lila managed. Cole grunted. "Don't thank me for basic decency. That's too low a bar." He settled back on his heels, studying her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're the seamstress, the one they laugh at." It wasn't a question, but Lila nodded anyway. "Grant pulled this stunt before," Cole said. 2 years ago. Convinced some kid fresh off the train that I needed help with fence repairs, sent him up here with a blank note, let him nearly die in the sun for a laugh." His jaw tightened. "I ran that kid off with the rifle. Didn't give him water. Didn't help. Figured if he was stupid enough to fall for Grant's games, he deserved what he got." "Why tell me this?" "Because I was wrong." The admission seemed to cost him. That kid made it back to town barely. Ended up sick for a week. Could have died. And for what? Grant's entertainment? He shook his head. "I won't make that mistake twice." Behind them, Ruby whickered, a low, pained sound that made Lila's heart clench. "Your mare," Lila said. "She's suffering." "I know." There was something raw in Cole's voice. "I've tried everything. Changed the bandages, applied salve, gave her every remedy I know. Nothing helps. The infection just keeps spreading." "Have you cleaned the wound?" "Of course I've cleaned the wound. I mean really cleaned it. Removed the dead tissue, drained the infection." Cole's face darkened. "She won't let me near it. Soon as I touch that leg, she loses her mind. Nearly kicked my skull in last time I tried." Lila looked at Ruby, at the way the mare was holding her weight off that infected leg, at the fever-bright pain in her eyes. "She's scared," she said quietly. "She thinks you're going to hurt her." "I'm trying to help her." "She doesn't know that. All she knows is pain." Lila pushed herself up, using the stall door for support. Her legs were still shaky, but she could stand. "Let me try." "You can barely stand yourself." "I know frightened things," Lila said. "I know how to make them feel safe." Cole looked at her for a long moment, this half-starved girl in a sweat-stained dress who just walked 5 miles through hell for a job that didn't exist. Then he stood, towering over her like a scarred monument. "You'll get yourself killed." "Maybe, but she'll die for certain if no one helps her." Something shifted in Cole's expression, not quite respect, but close to it. "Your funeral." He moved past her to open the stall door. "I'll get the supplies. You get yourself kicked to death, that's on you." Lila stepped into the stall. Ruby's head came up, ears flattening, whites of her eyes showing. She was hurting and scared and ready to fight anything that came near. "Easy," Lila murmured, staying near the door. "Easy, sweet girl. I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't move closer, didn't reach out, just stood there, speaking softly, letting Ruby see her, smell her, understand that she wasn't a threat. It took 5 full minutes before Ruby's ears came forward. "That's it," Lila whispered. "That's good. You're so good." Cole returned with a bucket of water, clean cloths, a jar of something that smelled like honey and herbs, and fresh bandages. He set everything down outside the stall, his movements careful and quiet. "This won't work," he said, but he didn't sound certain anymore. Lila took a cloth and dipped it in the water. She wrung it out, then held it at her side while she took one slow step toward Ruby. The mare tensed. Lila stopped, waited, kept breathing softly, kept her body language gentle and unthreatening. Ruby relaxed. Another step, another pause, another breath. It took 20 minutes to cross the 10 feet of stall between the door and the horse. 20 minutes of patience Cole clearly didn't possess. She could feel him twitching behind her, wanting to rush, wanting to force. But Lila knew better. Fear couldn't be rushed. Trust couldn't be forced. When she finally reached Ruby's shoulder, the mare was calm. Still hurting, still scared, but no longer ready to fight. "I'm going to touch you now," Lila said softly. "Just on your neck, just to let you know I'm here." She placed her palm against Ruby's warm coat. The mare flinched but didn't pull away. "Good girl, such a good, brave girl." Slowly, carefully, Lila ran her hand down Ruby's side, talking the whole time. Nonsense words, gentle praise, the kind of steady stream of sound that said, "You're safe. You're safe. I won't hurt you." When she reached the wounded leg, Ruby trembled but held still. "Cole," Lila said quietly, "I need you to hold her head. Gentle. Don't force her. Just let her know you're there." Cole moved into the stall with surprising care for a man his size. He positioned himself at Ruby's head, one massive hand coming up to rest on her neck. Ruby's eyes rolled, but she didn't bolt. "Talk to her," Lila said. "I don't—" Cole stopped, cleared his throat. Then, awkwardly, "You're all right, Ruby. We're trying to help." His voice was rough, unpracticed at gentleness. But Ruby's ears flicked toward it. Lila knelt beside the infected leg. Up close, it was even worse than she'd thought. The bandages were crusted with dried blood and pus. The flesh beneath was swollen, hot, and the smell— She breathed through her mouth and carefully began unwrapping the filthy cloth. Ruby shifted but didn't kick. "That's it," Lila murmured. "You're doing so well, so brave." The last of the bandage came away, and Lila had to swallow hard against the nausea. The wound was a horror show, a deep gash that had clearly been left too long, now infected with thick yellow pus and proud flesh. The edges were inflamed, the surrounding skin mottled with the telltale signs of spreading infection. "It needs to drain," Lila said. "All of it. It's gonna hurt her, but if we don't—" "She'll lose the leg," Cole finished grimly, "or die from blood poisoning. I know." "Hold her steady." Lila took the cleanest cloth and soaked it in the water. Then, with hands that had steadied hours of detailed needlework, she began cleaning the wound. She worked methodically, removing the worst of the dead tissue, her touch firm enough to be effective but gentle enough not to panic the mare. Ruby shuddered, stamped her good feet, but she didn't kick. "You're amazing," Cole said quietly. "She nearly killed me when I tried this." "Because you tried to force her," Lila said, not looking up from her work. "She's scared, not mean. There's a difference." When the wound was finally clean enough to see clearly, Lila pressed carefully on the swollen flesh around it. Pus welled up, thick and foul, but with it came relief. The pressure began to ease. Ruby actually relaxed slightly as the painful tension drained away. "The honey mixture," Lila said. Cole handed it to her. Lila applied it liberally. The antibacterial properties would help fight what remained of the infection. Then came the fresh bandages, wrapped snugly but not too tight, secured with knots she'd learned from years of working with fabric. When she finally stood, her knees were weak and her hands were stained with blood and pus, but Ruby's leg looked 100 times better. The mare was already putting more weight on it. The worst of the pain temporarily eased. "I'll need to change the dressing twice daily for at least a week," Lila said. "Maybe longer. And she'll need a poultice. I can make one from comfrey and yarrow if you have them or can get them. The infection might still spread, but this is the first real chance she's had," Cole said. He was staring at Lila like she'd just performed a miracle. Where did you learn—" "My mother was a midwife," Lila said quietly, "before she died. I was 12, but I watched her work. She taught me that gentleness heals better than force." She looked down at her stained hands. I should go. It's a long walk back and the heat. You're not walking back. Lila blinked. What? Look at yourself. You're dead on your feet. You walk back in this heat, Grant gets his joke. You dead on the roadside. Cole's expression was hard. I won't give him that satisfaction. I can't. I don't have anywhere. You can stay here in the bunkhouse. There's a cot, water, food. He paused, then added gruffly, and if you're willing, I could use your help with Ruby. Real help, not Grant's fake job. I'll pay you. Room, board, and wages. Fair wages. Lila stared at him. Why would you do that? Because you just did in 30 minutes what I couldn't do in 2 weeks, Cole said bluntly. Because Ruby needs you, and because... He stopped, jaw working like the words were hard to get out. Because Grant sent you here to die, and I'll be damned if I help him finish the job. It should have been an easy choice. Stay at the ranch, help the mayor, earn real money in a place where no one would laugh at her, or drain her wages for whiskey, but nothing in Lila's life had ever been easy. My father, she said. He'll come looking for my wages. He always does. Let him come. He won't get past the property line. You don't know him. When he's drinking, I said let him come. Cole's voice was flat, final. I've dealt with worse than drunks. Lila looked at Ruby, at the mare who was already standing easier, at the barn that smelled like hay and leather instead of Mrs. Brennan's chemicals, at Cole Maddox, the monster of Dry Creek, who'd given her water when he could have let her collapse. 2 weeks, she heard herself say, to see if the infection clears. Then we'll talk about longer. Cole nodded. 2 weeks. As he led her toward the bunkhouse, a small, clean building with a narrow cot and a wash basin, Lila felt something she hadn't felt in years unfurling in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hope. Not the desperate, fragile hope that came with Grant's $5 lie. Real hope. The kind built on clean water, honest work, and a scarred man who'd looked at her and seen something other than a joke. Behind them, Ruby whickered, softer now, already sounding stronger. And Lila Hart, the girl Dry Creek had written off as too weak to matter, allowed herself to believe she might have finally found a place where weakness wasn't the only thing anyone saw. The bunkhouse was sparse but clean, more than Lila had seen in years. A narrow cot with a wool blanket, a small table with a chipped ceramic basin, a mirror so old the silver had worn through in patches. The window faced east, letting in the last golden light of evening. It smelled like pine soap and honest work instead of the stale perfume and desperation of the boarding house in town. Lila sat on the edge of the cot and realized her hands were still shaking. Not from fear this time. From relief so profound it felt dangerous, like her body didn't quite trust it yet. She'd spent so long braced for the next blow, the next humiliation, the next hungry night, that kindness felt like a trap she hadn't learned to recognize. A knock on the door frame made her look up. Cole stood there holding a plate of food, cornbread beans, and what looked like actual meat, and a fresh pitcher of water. Eat, he said, setting them on the table. Then sleep. We'll check Ruby again in the morning. Mr. Maddox? Cole. Just Cole. He paused in the doorway, his scarred profile caught in the dying light. And don't thank me for this either. You earned it the moment you got that mare to trust you. He was gone before Lila could respond. She ate slowly, making herself chew each bite, even though her stomach wanted to wolf everything down. The cornbread was slightly burned at the edges, but still warm. The beans had been seasoned with salt pork. The meat was venison, tender and rich. It was the best meal she'd had in months. When she finally lay down on the cot, the wool blanket rough against her cheek, sleep took her before she could worry about what tomorrow would bring. She woke to birdsong and the kind of quiet that only existed away from town. No drunken arguments, no creaking floorboards from other boarders, no Mrs. Brennan shouting about orders that needed finishing. Just morning sounds. Wind through pine trees, a rooster crowing somewhere in the distance, the soft shuffle of horses in the pasture. Lila dressed quickly in the same stained dress from yesterday and made her way to the barn. The sun was just clearing the horizon, painting everything gold and pink. The air still held the coolness of night, though that wouldn't last long. She found Cole already in Ruby's stall, standing back with his arms crossed while the mare eyed him warily. "Morning," he said without turning. "Was about to come get you." "How is she?" See for yourself. Lila entered the stall slowly, murmuring greetings. Ruby's ears came forward immediately, and when Lila reached her side, the mare actually leaned into her touch. The bandage was clean, no bleeding through, no obvious swelling. When Lila carefully unwrapped it, the wound beneath looked better. Still infected, still angry, but the worst of the pus had drained. The flesh had lost some of that dangerous heat. "It's working," Cole said, and there was something close to wonder in his voice. "She's not out of danger yet, but yes, it's working." Lila cleaned the wound again, applied fresh honey mixture, rewrapped the leg with steady hands. Ruby stood patient through all of it, occasionally turning her head to blow soft breath against Lila's hair. "She likes you," Cole observed. "She knows I won't hurt her." Lila finished securing the bandage and stood, running her hand down Ruby's neck. "That's more than most creatures get to count on." Something in Cole's expression shifted, but he didn't comment. Instead he said, "I'll teach you the rest of the ranch work. Feeding schedules, water rotation, equipment maintenance. If you're staying 2 weeks, might as well make yourself useful." They fell into a routine that felt startling in its normalcy. Cole showed Lila how to measure grain, where the hay was stored, which horses needed supplements. He was a patient teacher, gruff and economical with words, but thorough. He never assumed she knew things, never made her feel stupid for asking questions. By mid-morning, Lila had learned more about horse care than she'd known existed. Her muscles ached from hauling water and moving hay bales, but it was good ache, the kind that came from work that mattered instead of endless hours hunched over a sewing table. They were refilling water troughs when Cole said, "Tell me about Grant." Lila's hand stilled on the pump handle. "What about him? Why does he hate you enough to try killing you?" "I don't think he hates me specifically. I'm just—" Lila searched for the right words. "Convenient. Easy to hurt. He does it because he can, and because people laugh when he does." "People are bastards." "Some of them." Lila resumed pumping, watching the water splash into the trough. "His father owns half of Dry Creek. Grant knows he can do whatever he wants without consequences." "And your father?" Cole's voice was careful. "The drunk?" "How did you—" "Pitch. Small town. Word travels." Cole picked up the full bucket, muscles barely straining under the weight. "He one of the bastards." Lila thought about lying, but what was the point? "He wasn't always. When my mother was alive, he was different. Kind, even. But after she died, he just gave up, started drinking, stopped caring about anything except the next bottle." She followed Cole toward the horse pasture. "He takes my wages. Every penny I make, he finds. Says it's rent, says it's what I owe him for raising me. Then he drinks it all away and I start over." "That's why you walked 5 miles for fake work." $5 would have been enough to hide some away. Maybe get a stagecoach ticket somewhere he couldn't find me. Lila laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Stupid dream." "Not stupid," Cole said. He poured water into the pasture trough, and 3 horses ambled over to drink, just not the right way out. "And what's the right way?" Cole was quiet for a long moment, watching the horses. The scars on his face caught the sunlight, turning the damaged flesh silver and pink. "Standing your ground, fighting back, not running until you've got something worth running to." Easy to say when you're 6.5 feet tall. Size doesn't matter as much as you think. He looked at her then, his good eyes sharp. "You got Ruby to trust you when I couldn't. You walked 5 miles through killing heat and didn't quit. You're tougher than you give yourself credit for." The words settled into Lila's chest like stones in a riverbed, solid, real, unexpected. No one had ever called her tough before. They worked through the afternoon, and Lila discovered she was good at this. Good at reading animal moods, good at the careful, patient work of building trust, good at tasks that required steady hands and stubborn determination. By evening, when they checked Ruby again, the mare was bearing weight normally on the healing leg. The infection was visibly receding, the flesh cooling, the terrible smell fading. "Another few days like this and she'll be clear," Cole said. "I can't believe—" He stopped, shook his head. "You saved her. I'd given up, and you saved her." "We saved her," Lila corrected. "I couldn't have done it without your supplies. Your knowledge." "My knowledge was killing her," Cole interrupted. "Don't minimize what you did." That night, Cole brought dinner to the bunkhouse again. Venison stew this time, with carrots and potatoes that melted on the tongue. They ate in companionable silence, and Lila found herself studying him when she thought he wasn't looking. The scars were brutal, yes, but beneath them was a man who'd been kind to her when he had no reason to be, who'd given her work and safety and food, and never once made her feel small for needing those things. "Can I ask what happened?" The words were out before Lila could stop them. "To your face?" She expected him to shut down, to leave, to turn cold. Instead, Cole just looked tired. "War," he said simply. "Not the big one everyone talks about. Smaller conflict out west. Apache raids, cavalry responses, a lot of good people dying for bad reasons." He touched the scars absently, took shrapnel from an exploding ammunition wagon, killed 3 men standing next to me. I survived, but he gestured at his face. Not intact. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I'm alive." "They're not. That's just math." But his voice suggested it was more complicated than math. "Came home to my wife, thinking at least I'd have her. But the cholera took her before I'd been back a month. And suddenly I was alone in a house too big for one person, with a face that made children cry and a reputation as the monster on the hill." "You're not a monster," Lila said quietly. Cole's laugh was sharp. "Tell that to Dry Creek." "A Dry Creek thinks I'm a joke. Doesn't make it true." That stopped him. He looked at her, really looked, his good eyes searching her face for something. "No," he said finally. "I suppose it doesn't." The second day followed the pattern of the first. Work, meals, checking Ruby's steady improvement, but the routine held something new now. Conversation. Small things at first, Cole asking about her mother's midwife work, Lila asking about his horses, their bloodlines, his breeding plans. By the third day, they were talking over morning coffee about everything and nothing. Books they'd read, places they'd never been but wanted to see, the difference between loneliness and solitude. "Solitude is choosing to be alone," Cole said, mending a bridle while Lila darned a hole in one of his work shirts. "Loneliness is having it chosen for you." "Which one are you?" "Started as the second. Became the first when I stopped caring what Dry Creek thought." He tested the repaired leather, nodded satisfaction. "You?" "I've never had the luxury of choosing." Lila bit off the thread, examined her neat stitches. "Being alone at least means no one's hurting you." "That's not solitude, that's just survival." "Maybe that's all I know." Cole was quiet for a moment, then, "You know more than that. You know gentleness, patience, how to make frightened things feel safe." He met her eyes. "That's not survival. That's healing." The fourth day brought visitors. Lila was in the barn with Ruby when she heard horses approaching. Multiple riders, moving fast. Her stomach dropped. Cole appeared in the barn door, his face grim. "Stay here. Don't come out." "Who is it?" "Trouble." He was gone before she could ask more. Lila moved to the barn window, peering through the gap in the boards. 3 riders had entered the ranch yard. Even from a distance, Lila recognized the lead horse, a flashy paint that belonged to Grant Harlow. Behind him rode Jake Calloway and Tom Brenner, both looking pleased with themselves. Cole stood in the yard, arms crossed, looking unimpressed. "This is private property." "Relax, Maddox," Grant's voice carried, smooth and poisonous. "Just checking on our little joke. Heard you might be harboring a stray." "Don't know what you're talking about." "Lila Hart, skinny thing, half dead when she should have gotten here, unless—" Grant's smile widened. Did she not make it? Did we finally get rid of Dry Creek's favorite punchline? "She made it," Cole said flatly. "And she's staying." The smile slipped from Grant's face. "Staying?" "Working for me. Tending horses. None of your business." Jake leaned forward in his saddle. "You can't be serious. That breakable little thing? She'll be dead in a week doing ranch work." "She's tougher than you," Cole said. "All 3 of you combined, actually." Grant's expression darkened. "This wasn't the deal, Maddox." "There was no deal. You sent a girl to die for entertainment. I gave her work instead. Now get off my property before I make you." Big talk from a cripple. The word hung in the air like a slap. Cole didn't move, but something changed in his posture, a coiling, a readiness. Last warning, leave. Grant looked like he wanted to push it, but even he wasn't stupid enough to challenge Cole Maddox on his own land. He wheeled his horse around, Jake and Tom following. "This isn't over," Grant called back. "She's got debts in town. Her father's owed money all over. You can't keep her. Watch me." They left in a cloud of dust and impotent fury. Lila stepped out of the barn on shaking legs. "I should go back. If I don't, they'll make trouble for you." "Let them try." Cole's voice was hard as iron. "You don't owe Dry Creek anything. Not them, not your father's debts, not one more second of your life. You don't understand. My father will come. He'll cause problems. Then I'll handle your father." Cole looked at her and his expression softened slightly. "You're not going back to that town, Lila. Not unless you choose to, and I don't think you want to choose that." He was right. God help her. He was right. 2 weeks, Lila said, her voice wavering. "That was the agreement. So we'll renegotiate." Cole's tone was matter-of-fact. "Ruby still needs daily care for another week at least. After that, I've got 4 other horses that could use your touch, and the ranch runs smoother with 2 people. Stay as long as you want. Leave when you want. But don't leave because Grant Harlow scared you into it." Lila looked at the ranch, at the barn where Ruby was healing, at the bunkhouse that had become more home in 4 days than the boarding house had been in 4 years, at the scarred man who'd shown her more respect than anyone in Dry Creek ever had. "1 month," she said. "Let me prove I can do the work for a full month. Then we'll talk about longer." Cole nodded. "Fair enough." But that night, lying in the bunkhouse with the window open to the cool evening air, Lila couldn't shake the memory of Grant's face. The anger. The promise that this wasn't over. She'd seen that look before, on men who didn't like losing their toys. And she knew, the way you know a storm is coming from the taste of the air, that Grant Harlow wasn't done with her yet. The 5th day dawned hot and still. Lila was checking Ruby's leg, almost completely healed now, the infection gone, the flesh pink and healthy, when she heard shouting from the main house. She ran. Her father stood in the ranch yard, swaying drunk, his face purple with rage. Cole blocked the path to the bunkhouse, and even drunk, Ray Hart wasn't stupid enough to try going through him. "Where is she?" Ray's words slurred together. "Where's my daughter? She owes me—" "She doesn't owe you anything," Cole said, his voice dangerously calm. "The hell she doesn't. I raised her, fed her, kept a roof over her head. You drank her wages and made her life hell." Cole took a step forward, and despite being drunk, Ray stumbled back. "She works for me now. Her earnings are hers. You don't get a penny." Lila stepped into view before she could think better of it. "Papa." Ray's face lit up with drunken hope. "Lila, baby girl, come home. This ain't right. You staying out here with this monster—" "Don't." Lila's voice was steady, though her heart was racing. "Don't pretend you care about where I am. You just want money for whiskey. That's not— I'm your father. You stopped being my father when you started stealing from me." The words felt like pulling splinters from an old wound. "I'm staying here. I'm earning honest wages for honest work, and you're not taking them anymore." Ray's expression twisted from hope to fury. "You ungrateful little— After everything I did, you did nothing." And suddenly, all the years of silence, of swallowing humiliation, of making herself small, came pouring out. "Mama did everything. She worked herself to death keeping us fed while you drank. And when she was gone, you blamed me for existing, for looking like her, for reminding you what you'd lost." Lila's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed strong. "I'm done carrying your guilt. I'm done paying for your choices." "Lila, go home, Papa. Sober up. Figure out how to live without draining someone else dry. But don't come back here looking for money because you won't get it." Ray looked between Lila and Cole, seemed to calculate his odds, and found them wanting. "This ain't over," he muttered, but there was no strength behind it. "Yes, it is," Cole said. "And if you come back drunk, I'll have the sheriff remove you. Go home, Hart." They watched Ray stumble back toward the road, his shoulders hunched, his pride in tatters. When he was gone, Lila discovered she was crying. Not sad tears, something else. Relief, maybe, or grief for the father she'd never really had. Cole didn't say anything, just stood there, solid and present, until she'd cried herself out. "I'm sorry," Lila said finally, wiping her eyes. "I shouldn't have—" "Don't apologize for standing up for yourself." Cole's voice was gentle. "That took more courage than most people have. I've never talked to him like that before. Maybe it was time." Lila looked at the road where her father had disappeared. "He'll drink himself to death now, without my wages. That's his choice, not your responsibility." Cole turned to face her fully. "You can't save someone who doesn't want saving. Believe me, I've tried." "Your wife?" "Among others." His expression was distant. "Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their own actions. Otherwise, you're just enabling them to destroy themselves slower." It was a hard truth, but Lila felt its weight settle into understanding. She'd spent so many years trying to fix her father, trying to earn enough that maybe he'd drink less, trying to be good enough that maybe he'd remember he loved her. But you couldn't love someone into sobriety. You couldn't earn your way into mattering to someone who'd already decided you didn't. "Come on," Cole said, breaking the moment. "Ruby's bandage needs changing, and I want to check the fence line in the north pasture. Could use your eyes." They worked through the day, and Lila felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of old chains she hadn't known she was carrying. Standing up to her father hadn't fixed anything, but it had proven she could do it, that her voice had weight, that she was allowed to say no. That evening, as they sat on the porch of the main house watching the sun paint the sky orange and gold, Cole said, "You did good today. I made my father hate me. He already hated himself. You just stopped letting him use you as a mirror for it." Cole took a sip of coffee. "That's not cruelty. That's self-preservation." Lila thought about that, about the difference between kindness and self-destruction, about how many years she'd confused the two. "My mother used to say that healing starts when you stop picking at the wound," she said quietly. "I think I've been picking at the wound of my father's love for my whole life, hoping it would somehow hurt less. And now? Now I'm letting it scar." Lila looked at her hands, stronger now after a week of ranch work, calloused in new places, capable. Scars are tougher than open wounds. Cole touched his face absently, his fingers tracing the damaged skin. "They are," he agreed, "but they're also proof you survived something. That counts for something." They sat in comfortable silence while the stars came out one by one, and Lila realized she hadn't thought about Dry Creek or her old life for hours, hadn't worried about whether she was good enough, small enough, quiet enough. Here, on this ranch, with this scarred man and these horses who trusted her, she was just Lila. And for the first time in her life, that felt like enough. The week ended with Ruby completely healed, walking sound and strong. Lila stood in the pasture watching the mare gallop, pure joy in motion, powerful muscles bunching and releasing, the nightmare of infection just a memory now. "I've never seen her move like that," Cole said, leaning against the fence beside her. "Not even before she got hurt. It's like she knows she's alive." "Maybe she does." Lila smiled, watching Ruby wheel and buck, celebrating her own survival. "Sometimes almost dying teaches you how to live." Cole looked at her sidelong. "We still talking about the horse?" Lila's smile widened. "Maybe not." "The month's not up yet," Cole said after a moment. "But I'm asking anyway. Stay. Not as a temporary hand. As my partner in this place. Equal wages, equal say in how things run. I know horses, you know healing. Together we could build something good here." It should have been a hard decision. Lila barely knew this man, barely knew this life. But she thought about the alternative, going back to Dry Creek, back to the boarding house, back to Mrs. Brennan's shop and her father's demands and Grant's cruelty, going back to being invisible. "I'll stay," she said, "but only if you teach me to ride." Cole's laugh was surprised, genuine. "Deal." They shook on it, two broken people finding strength in each other's scars, while Ruby ran circles in the pasture and the Texas sun blazed overhead like a promise instead of a punishment. Neither of them saw the figure watching from the tree line. Grant Harlow on his paint horse, his face twisted with rage, his hands clenched white-knuckled on the reins. Neither of them knew he'd already decided that if he couldn't have his joke, he'd have his revenge. The storm was coming. But for now, in this moment, Lila Hart allowed herself to believe in safety. It was a mistake that would nearly cost her everything. The trouble started small, the way most disasters do. 3 days after Lila agreed to stay permanently, supplies went missing from the barn. Nothing critical: a coil of rope, some spare horseshoes, a bag of grain. Cole noticed first, his jaw tightening as he surveyed the gaps where things should have been. Could be coincidence, Lila offered, though she didn't believe it. Could be. Cole's tone said he didn't believe it either. Or someone's testing how close they can get without us noticing. They reinforced the locks that night. Cole showed Lila how to load and fire his spare rifle, his hands patient over hers as he corrected her stance, her grip, her breathing. The weight of the weapon felt foreign and terrible, but also strangely reassuring. "I don't want to shoot anyone," Lila said. "Neither do I. But wanting and needing are different things." Cole stepped back, watched her sight down the barrel. "You don't have to kill. Just make noise if someone comes who shouldn't. I'll handle the rest." The next morning, they found one of the pasture fences cut. Not broken by weather or age, cut cleanly with wire snips 3 rails down, opening a gap wide enough for horses to escape through. Only luck and good training kept Cole's horses from wandering onto open range, where they could be claimed by anyone who found them. "This is deliberate," Cole said, examining the cut ends. "Someone wants us scrambling, wants us scared." "Grant?" "Probably, but I can't prove it, and the sheriff won't act on suspicion." He stood, his expression grim. "We need to be ready for worse." Worse came 2 nights later. Lila woke to the smell of smoke. She was out of the bunkhouse in seconds, her heart slamming against her ribs. The night was thick with darkness, no moon, but she could see the orange glow coming from behind the main barn. Fire. Not big yet, but growing. "Cole!" Her voice ripped through the quiet. He emerged from the house already dressed, boots in hand. "The barn." "I see it. Get water. I'll move the horses." They moved like they'd trained for this, though they hadn't. Lila ran for the barn while Cole hauled buckets from the well. The horses were already spooked, smelling smoke, stamping and calling in alarm. Lila yanked open stall doors, trusting the animals to run for open pasture rather than stand and burn. Ruby came to her immediately, pressing close. "Go," Lila urged, slapping the mare's flank. "Run, girl, go!" One by one, the horses fled into the night. Lila did a final check, every stall empty, no animals left trapped, before running back outside. Cole had the fire mostly contained, beating out flames with wet blankets, pouring water on what remained. By the time Lila reached him, it was down to smoking embers. "Deliberate?" she asked, though she already knew. Cole held up a broken lantern. The glass was shattered, but the base was intact. "Left right against the barn wall. If we'd been asleep another 10 minutes, we'd have lost everything." Lila's hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. "He's trying to destroy you." "He's trying to destroy us." Cole's face was hard in the dim light. "You're part of this ranch now. That makes you a target too." "Then we go to the sheriff." "And say what? Someone cut a fence and left a lantern? Could be accident. Could be drifters." Cole threw the broken lantern into the dirt. "Grant's smart enough not to leave proof." "So we just wait for him to kill us?" "No, we get smart too." Cole looked toward the dark horizon where his horses had scattered. "Tomorrow we round up the herd and move them closer to the house. We set watches at night. We make it harder for him to hurt us without getting caught." They spent the rest of the night on the porch, rifles across their laps, watching for movement in the shadows. Nothing came, but the absence of attack felt more threatening than presence, like Grant was out there somewhere, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Dawn came cold and gray. They found the horses easily enough, gathered them back to pasture, checked each one for injury. All accounted for, all safe. But the barn wall was scorched black, a permanent reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. Lila was washing the smoke smell from her hair when she heard horses approaching. Multiple riders again. Her stomach dropped, but when she looked out, it wasn't Grant. It was the sheriff. Sheriff Wade Callahan was a weathered man in his 50s, with iron gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. He sat his horse like someone born to it, his badge catching the morning light. Behind him rode two deputies, both young and serious. Cole met them in the yard. "Sheriff?" "Maddox." Callahan dismounted, his gaze sweeping the property. "Had a report of trouble out here. Fire last night?" "Small one. We handled it." "Handled it." The sheriff walked to the barn, examined the scorched wood, the burn pattern. "This looks deliberate. Can't prove it." "Can't prove it, or won't say who?" Callahan turned back to Cole. "I know you've had issues with Grant Harlow. Know he's got reason to hold a grudge about your new ranch hand." Lila stepped out of the bunkhouse, and 3 sets of eyes turned to her. She lifted her chin, refusing to shrink under the scrutiny. "Miss Hart," the sheriff said, tipping his hat. "Heard you were out here. Also heard your father's been causing trouble in town, saying you were kidnapped, held against your will." "I'm here by choice," Lila said firmly, "working for fair wages, which is more than I ever got in Dry Creek." "And Grant Harlow? Tried to kill me by sending me out here with no water and a blank note. Mr. Maddox saved my life and gave me honest work. If Grant's angry about that, it's because I survived his joke." Callahan studied her for a long moment. "You willing to swear to that in front of witnesses?" "I am." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Then I'll need you both to come to town tomorrow. Make formal statements. I can't arrest Grant on suspicion, but I can start building a case if he keeps escalating." He looked at the burned barn wall. "And this looks like escalation to me." After the sheriff left, Cole turned to Lila. "You don't have to go back to Dry Creek. I can make the statement alone." "No." Lila's voice was steady. "I'm done hiding. If we're going to stop Grant, we do it together." The ride to Dry Creek the next day felt like traveling backward through time. Lila sat astride one of Cole's gentle mares. She'd been learning to ride, as promised, though she was still awkward in the saddle. Cole rode beside her on his big bay gelding, his presence solid and reassuring. The town looked exactly as she'd left it. Dusty streets, false front buildings, people going about their business with the kind of casual cruelty that came from boredom and limited options. When Lila and Cole rode down Main Street, conversations stopped. People stared. "Is that Lila Hart? Thought she was dead. Look at her. Actually riding a horse. Looks almost healthy." The whispers followed them like flies. Lila kept her eyes forward, her spine straight. She'd spent too many years trying to disappear in this town. She was done with that. The sheriff's office was a small building near the center of town. Inside, it was dim and cool, smelling of coffee and old paper. Sheriff Callahan sat behind a battered desk, and standing against the wall was a man Lila didn't recognize, lean and hard-eyed, with the look of someone who'd spent time on the wrong side of the law. "This is Jonah Pike," Callahan said. "Works for Grant Harlow. Or did, until yesterday." The sheriff gestured to chairs. "Sit. We've got things to discuss." Lila sat, her heart racing. Cole remained standing, one hand resting on the back of her chair. Jonah Pike cleared his throat. "I came to the sheriff because I'm done being part of Grant's games. What he's planning, it's gone too far." "What is he planning?" Cole's voice was dangerously quiet. "Started small. Harassment, theft, trying to scare you off. But when that didn't work, he got creative." Jonah's jaw tightened. "He's been buying up debts all over town, your father's tabs." He nodded to Lila. "Other people's loans, anything connected to either of you. He's calling them all in at once, trying to create legal pressure." "That's not illegal," Cole said. "No, but poisoning a water supply is." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Lila felt the blood drain from her face. "What?" "There's an underground spring about 2 miles from here. Feeds the wells for half the county, including most of Dry Creek." Jonah looked sick. "Grant's been talking about dumping arsenic compound into it. Not enough to kill quick, but enough to make everyone sick, make the town unlivable." "That's insane," Lila whispered. "He'd be poisoning his own people." "He doesn't care. In his mind, if he can't have his way, everyone suffers." Jonah met the sheriff's eyes. "I got family here. My sister's got 3 kids. I'm not letting him poison them because he's mad about losing a joke." Sheriff Callahan leaned back in his chair. This is a serious accusation, Pike. You got proof? I got his own words. He told me and two others, Jake Calloway and Tom Brenner, about the plan 3 days ago. Said he'd already bought the arsenic from a supplier in El Paso, claimed it was for rat control on his father's properties. Jonah pulled a folded paper from his pocket. This is the receipt. Has his signature. The sheriff examined the document. Arsenic for rat control isn't illegal. But dumping it in the water supply is. And I'm willing to testify that's exactly what he said he'd do if Maddox and Miss Hart didn't leave the county. Cole's hand tightened on Lila's chair. When? Soon. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. He's waiting for the right moment. When you're both visible in town so he can claim you couldn't have stopped it, but also so everyone knows you're the reason it happened. Lila's mind was racing. The spring! Where exactly is it? Jonah hesitated. Cave system north of here. Main entrance is hidden in a ravine, but there's a back way through if you know where to look. Show us, Cole said. Hold on. Sheriff Callahan stood. This is law business now. I'll gather a posse and we'll secure that spring. By the time you gather men and ride out there, Grant could have already poisoned it, Lila interrupted. How long does arsenic take to contaminate groundwater? Hours, Jonah said quietly. Maybe less, depending on concentration. Lila looked at Cole. We have to go now. Miss Hart, you're not a deputy. But I know healing. I know poisons. Lila stood, her fear transforming into determination. My mother taught me about arsenic, what it does, how it spreads, how to potentially neutralize it if you catch it early. You need me. The sheriff and Cole both started to protest, but Lila cut them off. Every minute we argue, Grant gets closer to killing dozens of people. Maybe hundreds if that spring feeds, as far as Jonah says. I'm going. You can either come with me or waste time trying to stop me. Cole looked at her for a long moment, and something passed between them. Recognition, respect, the understanding that came from knowing someone's true strength. Then we go together, he said, fast and quiet. Jonah, you lead. Sheriff, you gather that posse and follow as quick as you can. This is a bad idea, Callahan muttered, but he was already moving. At least take a deputy. No time, we'll handle it. Cole checked his rifle, his movements efficient. If we're not back in 3 hours, assume the worst and lock down the town wells. They were mounted and moving within minutes. Jonah led them north, away from the main roads, through scrubland that gradually climbed into rocky terrain. Lila's mare picked her way carefully over loose stone, and Lila focused on staying balanced, on not slowing them down. You didn't have to come, Cole said quietly as they rode. Yes, I did. Lila kept her eyes on the path ahead. Grant made this about me when he sent me to die. If I hide now, I'm letting him win. You could get killed. I could get killed staying home too. At least this way I'm fighting back. They rode hard for 40 minutes before Jonah pulled up at the edge of a ravine. Below, barely visible through scrub brush, was a dark opening in the rock face. There, Jonah said. That's the main entrance. The spring's about 200 yards in a chamber where the water pools before it filters into the aquifer. And the back entrance? Cole asked. Other side of the ridge, harder to reach, but it comes out closer to the spring chamber. Jonah dismounted. I'll take the back way. Make sure he hasn't already. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. They split up. Jonah disappeared around the ridge while Cole and Lila descended into the ravine. The cave entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Cole went first, rifle ready, and Lila followed with her heart in her throat. Inside, the temperature dropped immediately. The air smelled of stone and water, and something chemical that made Lila's stomach turn. They moved through darkness, Cole's lamp throwing wild shadows on the cave walls. The path sloped downward, narrowing and widening unpredictably, water trickling along channels worn smooth by centuries. Then they heard voices. Cole went still, one hand coming up to signal silence. They crept forward, and the passage opened into a larger chamber. The spring was there, a dark pool fed by water seeping from cracks in the stone, clear and cold and beautiful. And standing beside it, holding a glass bottle filled with white powder, was Grant Harlow. He wasn't alone. Jake Calloway and Tom Brenner flanked him, both holding rifles, both looking nervous in the lamplight. "I told you this was stupid," Tom was saying. "Poisoning the whole county." "Shut up," Grant's voice echoed off the cave walls. "They took everything from me. My pride, my reputation, my control. This is justice." "This is murder," Jake said, but he didn't lower his rifle. Grant unstoppered the bottle. "Then I'm a murderer. I can live with that." "Stop!" Lila's voice rang out before she could think better of it. 3 heads whipped toward them. 3 rifles came up. Cole moved in front of Lila, his own weapon ready, and the cave became a standoff carved from stone and shadow. Grant's laugh was ugly. "Of course, the joke that wouldn't die and her pet monster. Come to watch?" "Put the bottle down," Cole said calmly. "There's no coming back from this, Grant. Poison that water and you're done. Murder charges, hanging, the end of everything your family built." "My family doesn't care about me. My father cares about money and power. This town cares about itself." Grant's hand tightened on the bottle. "But they'll care when their children start dying. They'll remember Grant Harlow then." "They'll remember you as a killer," Lila said, stepping out from behind Cole despite his hissed warning. "A coward who murdered innocents because he couldn't handle being told no." "You don't get to judge me, you pathetic." "I'm not judging. I'm just telling you the truth." Lila's voice was steady, though her hands were shaking. "You sent me to die because it made you feel powerful. But I lived. I found worth in myself, found work that matters, found people who see me as more than a punchline, and that my survival, my happiness, that's what's really eating you alive." Grant's face twisted with rage. "You think you've won? You think running off to play ranch hand makes you special?" "No, I think standing here, ready to stop you from killing children to soothe your ego, makes me better than you." Lila took another step forward. "Put down the bottle, Grant. This isn't who you have to be." For a moment, one fragile, trembling moment, something flickered in Grant's expression. Doubt, maybe even shame. Then Jake shifted his weight, and the moment shattered. "Don't listen to her," Jake said. "She's trying to—" The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Lila screamed. Cole fired back. Everything dissolved into chaos and echoes, and the acrid smell of gunpowder. She hit the ground hard, her ears ringing, unable to tell who'd shot first or who was hit. When the echoes faded, Tom Brenner was on the ground clutching his shoulder, his rifle skittering away across stone. Jake had his hands up, his weapon dropped. And Grant was running. Cole started after him, but Lila shouted, "The bottle!" She saw it then, the glass container lying on its side near the spring's edge. The stopper knocked loose, white powder beginning to spill toward the water. Lila lunged for it. Her hands closed around the bottle just as the first grains touched the spring's surface. She jerked it back, her heart slamming, and quickly stoppered it again. The powder inside was still mostly intact. Only a few grains had escaped, not enough to poison the entire water supply, but enough to contaminate this pool. "Lila, move!" Jonah's voice came from the back passage. He burst into the chamber carrying a leather bag, his face grim. "I brought iron filings from the blacksmith. If we can precipitate the arsenic before it fully dissolves—" "Do it," Cole snapped. He had Jake on his knees now, hands behind his head. "Lila, get back!" But Lila was already moving, her mother's teachings flooding back. Arsenic could bond with iron under the right conditions, forming compounds that would sink instead of dissolve. It wasn't perfect. Some contamination would remain, but it might be enough to prevent widespread poisoning. She and Jonah worked frantically, dumping iron filings into the spring, stirring with branches, watching the water turn cloudy as the chemical reaction took hold. Minutes felt like hours. Lila's arms ached. Her lungs burned from the damp cave air and residual gunpowder smoke. Finally, Jonah sat back. "That's all we can do. The rest is up to time and filtration." Cole had Tom and Jake secured now, both men sitting with their backs to the cave wall, both looking like they wished they'd never met Grant Harlow. "Where did he go?" "Deeper into the caves," Jake said miserably. "There's passages that lead out to the ridgeline, but some of them dead end. He doesn't know the system like Jonah does. He might get lost." "Or he might escape," Tom added. "Either way, we told him this was wrong. We told him—" "You still came with rifles," Cole said coldly. "Save your excuses for the judge." The The sound of boots on stone announced the sheriff's arrival. Callahan appeared with 4 deputies, all armed, all looking ready for war. His eyes swept the scene, the poisoned spring, the iron filings, the 2 subdued men, the arsenic bottle in Lila's trembling hands. "Report," he barked. Cole gave it to him in crisp sentences. The attempted poisoning, the gunfight, Grant's escape into the cave system. Through it all, Lila stood holding the bottle like it might explode, her entire body shaking with delayed shock. When Cole finished, the sheriff turned to his deputies. "2 of you seal this entrance, 2 more with me. We're going after Harlow. Jonah, you're with us. You know these caves." "What about the water?" Lila asked, her voice thin. Callahan looked at the cloudy spring. "Can anyone drink from this?" "Not for weeks," Jonah said. "Maybe months. The iron compound needs to settle, and even then there'll be trace contamination. Every well that pulls from this source should be closed until we can test them." "That's half the county." "Better thirsty than dead." The sheriff's face was grim. "Right. Pike, leave detailed instructions with Miss Hart on which wells to shut down. Then let's move." They disappeared into the depths of the cave system, lamplight fading, voices echoing into silence. Cole tied Tom and Jake more securely, then turned to Lila. "You all right?" Lila looked down at her hands. They were filthy with cave dust and iron residue, still clutching the bottle that had nearly killed hundreds. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I keep thinking if we'd been 5 minutes later, but we weren't." Cole gently took the bottle from her, set it carefully aside. "You stopped him. You and Jonah saved this whole region. We just delayed the poison. People will still suffer without clean water. They'll survive. That's what matters." Cole's scarred face was gentle in the lamplight. "You did good, Lila. Better than good." She wanted to believe him, but all she could think about was Grant somewhere in the darkness, still free, still dangerous, still determined to make everyone pay for his wounded pride. From deep in the caves came a shout, then another, then the unmistakable crack of gunfire. Lila and Cole locked eyes, but there was nothing they could do except wait, and hope the sheriff was faster than Grant's desperation. The minutes crawled past like wounded things. Tom and Jake sat in miserable silence. Lila paced, unable to be still. Cole stood guard, his rifle ready, his expression unreadable. Then footsteps, multiple sets moving quickly. The sheriff emerged first, his face dark with barely controlled rage. Behind him came his deputies, dragging Grant between them. The golden boy of Dry Creek was no longer golden. His fancy clothes were torn and filthy, his face bleeding from a gash over his eye, his hands bound with rope. But worse than the physical damage was his expression, wild, uncomprehending, like a child who'd finally pushed too far and couldn't understand why the world was pushing back. "Found him trying to squeeze through a crack barely wide enough for a dog," Callahan said. "Got himself wedged in so tight we had to pull him out like a cork." The sheriff's smile was sharp. "Fitting, I think. Tried to slip away from consequences and got himself trapped instead." Grant's eyes found Lila, and the hatred there was pure and terrible. "This is your fault," he hissed. "All of it. If you just died like you were supposed to." "Shut your mouth," the sheriff snapped. "You're under arrest for attempted murder, attempted poisoning of public water supply, arson, theft, and whatever else I can think of on the ride back to town. You're done, Harlow. Your father's money won't save you from this." They hauled him to his feet, and Grant fought like an animal, screaming threats and obscenities that echoed through the cave until they dragged him out of sight. In the sudden quiet, Lila felt her legs give out. She sat down hard on the cave floor, her breath coming in shaky gasps, everything finally catching up to her. Cole crouched beside her. "It's over," he said quietly. But Lila shook her head. "Not yet. We still have to tell the town their water's poisoned. We still have to face my father and everyone who laughed when Grant sent me to die. We still have to prove we deserve to exist without apologizing for it." Cole was silent for a moment. Then, "You're right. It's not over. But we won today. That counts for something." Lila looked at him. This scarred man who'd given her water when he could have turned her away, who'd taught her to stand when everyone else wanted her to kneel, who'd fought beside her against poison and bullets and a town's casual cruelty. "It counts for everything," she said. They emerged from the cave to find the sun past its zenith, the day burning toward evening. Their horses waited patiently, and in the distance they could see the dust cloud of the sheriff's posse heading back toward Dry Creek with their prisoners. Lila and Cole rode slowly, neither ready to rush toward what came next. The confrontation with the town, the hard conversations, the long recovery from a crisis barely averted. But as they rode, Lila felt something new growing in her chest. Not hope this time, but something fiercer, pride. She'd faced down a killer, she'd saved a water supply. She'd proven that the breakable girl everyone dismissed was stronger than all of them combined. Dry Creek would have to reckon with that. And so would she. The town square was packed when they arrived. Word had spread faster than wildfire. The attempted poisoning, the arrests, the contaminated spring. People spilled out of buildings, gathered in clusters, their faces ranging from terrified to furious to disbelieving. When Lila and Cole rode down Main Street, the crowd parted like water around stones, and the silence was deafening. Sheriff Callahan stood on the steps of his office, Grant and his men already locked inside. The sheriff's voice carried over the crowd as he explained what had happened, what had almost happened, and what came next. Every well connected to the northern spring system would be closed immediately. Water would have to be hauled from the southern wells and the river until testing confirmed safety. It would be hard, it would be inconvenient, but they were alive, and that was more than they would have been if Grant's plan had succeeded. "And who do we thank for stopping it?" someone called out. Callahan's gaze found Lila and Cole still mounted at the edge of the crowd. Cole Maddox and Lila Hart rode into those caves knowing they might not come out. They fought armed men, neutralized the poison, and bought us time to lock down the contamination. This town owes them a debt. The silence that followed was complicated. Lila could see the calculation happening on familiar faces, people who'd laughed when Grant sent her to die, who'd called Cole a monster, who'd built their entertainment on the suffering of others. Now they had to reconcile those casual cruelties with the fact that the people they'd dismissed had just saved their lives. Some had the grace to look ashamed. Others just looked confused, like the world had tilted and they couldn't figure out which way was up anymore. "3 cheers for Maddox and Hart," someone shouted, and a ragged cheer went up, more obligation than genuine gratitude. Lila felt sick. She didn't want their cheers. She wanted them to understand what they'd done, what they'd been complicit in, but she knew better than to expect that kind of reckoning. People were good at forgetting their own cruelty when it became inconvenient to remember. Cole must have sensed her thoughts because his hand came to rest briefly on her shoulder. "Let's get out of here," he said quietly. They were turning their horses when a figure pushed through the crowd. Lila's father stumbled toward them, and for a horrible moment she thought he was drunk again, but his eyes were clear, red-rimmed and devastated, but clear. "Lila," Ray Hart said, and his voice broke on her name. "Baby girl, He stopped, seemed to collapse in on himself. "I heard what you did, what you've been doing, and He couldn't finish. Lila looked down at him from the saddle, this man who'd drained her dry for years, who'd blamed her for existing, who'd never once protected her the way a father should. Part of her wanted to ride past without a word, let him drown in his guilt the way she'd drowned in his neglect. But another part, the part her mother had nurtured, the part that understood brokenness because she'd lived it, that part made her pause. "Are you sober?" she asked. Ray nodded. 3 days now. "I know that's nothing. I know it doesn't make up for—" His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, Lila. For all of it. For every penny I stole, every time I made you small, every day I chose whiskey over being your father. You deserved better. You deserved everything, and I gave you nothing." The crowd had gone silent again, everyone watching this private devastation play out in public. "I don't forgive you," Lila said, and the words came out steady, certain. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did, what you took from me, that doesn't disappear because you're sorry now." Ray's face crumbled. I know, and I don't deserve—" "But," Lila continued, cutting him off, "if you're serious about being sober, if you're willing to actually change instead of just feeling guilty, then maybe someday we can talk. Not as father and daughter, as two people trying to survive their own damage." She could see the hope flare in his eyes, desperate and fragile. "I'll do it. I swear, Lila, I'll stay sober. I'll work. I'll pay back what I owe. Don't swear to me. Swear to yourself. Lila gathered her reins. Prove it through actions, not words. And if you can do that, if you can be the man my mother thought she married, then maybe we'll have something to build on. She didn't wait for his response. She rode away, Cole beside her, and left her father standing in the street with his promises and his pain. They were a mile out of town when Cole spoke. That was generous of you. Was it? Lila's voice was hollow. I'm not sure. Maybe it was just not cruel. There's a difference. There is. And you chose not cruel when you had every right to choose cruel. That's strength, Lila. Don't diminish it. They rode in silence for a while, the ranch growing closer with each step. Lila's mind was churning, processing the cave, the confrontation, her father's tears, the town's complicated gratitude. Everything felt too big, too much, like she'd lived a year in the space of a single day. When Ridgefire Ranch came into view, Lila felt something in her chest loosen. The barn with its scorched wall, the bunkhouse where she'd learned to sleep without fear, the pasture where Ruby grazed, healthy and whole. This place had become home faster than anywhere she'd ever lived, and the sight of it settled something deep in her bones. They tended the horses in comfortable silence, the familiar routine grounding them both. Feed, water, brush down, check hooves. Simple tasks that required attention but not thought, giving their minds space to process everything that had happened. It was full dark by the time they finished. Cole built a fire in the house, the first time Lila had been invited inside, and they sat on opposite ends of the worn sofa, drinking coffee that was too strong and too hot, but somehow exactly right. You could have died today, Cole said finally, staring into his cup. In that cave, when the shooting started. You could have died, and it would have been my fault for letting you come. You didn't let me do anything. I chose to go. Lila set her cup down. And yes, I could have died. You could have died too, but we didn't. We won. This time, Cole's jaw was tight. Grant's in jail, but there are others like him. Other people who'll see you as a target because you're different, because you didn't stay in the box they built for you. I know. Lila pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. I've been a target my whole life, Cole. The difference now is I'm not facing it alone. Cole looked at her then, his scarred face catching the firelight, and something passed between them, an understanding too deep for words. They were both broken things that had found each other in the wreckage. Both people the world had tried to crush, who'd refused to stay down. I meant what I said about partnership, Cole said quietly. Equal stakes in this ranch. Equal say. I'll have papers drawn up legal. Make it binding. You don't have to. I want to. You've earned it 10 times over. He paused, then added, and I want you to know you're safe here. That this is home for as long as you want it to be. Lila felt tears prick her eyes. Not sad tears, but something else. Relief, gratitude. The overwhelming weight of finally being seen as something other than a burden or a joke. Thank you, she whispered. They sat by the fire until the logs burned to embers, talking about nothing and everything. Plans for expanding the horse operation. Ideas for a vegetable garden. The possibility of hiring another hand come spring. Small dreams built on the foundation of survival, growing into something that looked almost like a future. When Lila finally returned to the bunkhouse, exhaustion pulled her toward sleep like a tide. But she lay awake for a while, staring at the ceiling, processing the day's impossible events. She'd faced down a killer, saved a water supply, stood up to her father, been called a hero by a town that had spent years treating her like refuse. And through it all, she'd discovered something fundamental about herself. She was stronger than anyone had ever given her credit for, stronger than she'd given herself credit for. That knowledge felt like armor. The next few days were strange. Lila and Cole fell back into ranch routine, but the outside world kept intruding. People from town rode out with thank you gifts, food, supplies, offers of help. Some seemed genuine in their gratitude. Others felt performative, like they were trying to absolve themselves of years of cruelty with a basket of preserves and an awkward handshake. Lila accepted it all with quiet grace, neither warm nor cold, just present. She didn't owe these people her forgiveness, but she didn't owe them her anger either. They could live with the discomfort of their own conscience. On the fourth day, Sheriff Callahan rode out alone. They met him in the yard, and Lila's stomach tightened at his expression. He looked like a man carrying bad news. Grant's father posted bail, Callahan said without preamble. Judge set it high, $5,000, but Harlow Sr. paid it without blinking. Cole's face went hard. He can't be serious. His son tried to poison half the county. His son is his heir, and old man Harlow believes money can fix anything. The sheriff dismounted, his movements tired. Grant's restricted to his father's property with armed guards. Can't leave the county, can't contact witnesses. Trial's set for 3 weeks from now. But he's out, Lila finished. Her hands were shaking. He's out, and he knows where we live. I've got a deputy watching the Harlow place, and I'll send patrols past your ranch regular. But I can't be everywhere. Callahan's expression was grim. You two need to stay sharp, keep weapons close, don't go anywhere alone. After he left, Lila and Cole stood in the yard, the weight of new danger pressing down. I should have killed him in the cave, Cole said, his voice flat. When I had the chance. Then you'd be the one in jail. Lila turned to face him. We follow the law, we trust the process. That's what separates us from people like Grant. The law just let an attempted murderer walk free on his father's money. For now, but the trial assumes we live long enough to testify. Cole's jaw was tight. I'm not taking chances with your life, Lila. Not again. That night, Cole moved a cot into the barn and stationed himself there with a loaded rifle. Lila tried to argue. He needed sleep, needed rest, but he was immovable. So she brought blankets and an extra lamp and helped him set up a watch post that had clear sight lines to all approaches. This is temporary, Cole said, checking his rifle for the third time. Just until the trial, just until he's locked up permanent. Lila wanted to believe him, but she'd seen Grant's face in that cave, the hatred, the absolute refusal to accept consequences. Men like that didn't learn. They didn't change. They just got more desperate. The first week passed without incident. Then the second. Lila started to think maybe they'd worried for nothing. Maybe the guards on Grant were enough. Maybe his father had actually talked sense into him. She should have known better. It was late afternoon when the rider came. Not Grant, but someone Lila recognized from town. Martha Chen, the woman whose goat Lila used to gentle. Martha's face was pale, her hands shaking on the reins. Miss Hart, she gasped. You need to come. It's your father. Lila's blood went cold. What happened? He's sick, real sick. Started 2 days ago, vomiting, fever, can't keep anything down. Doc says it might be the water, that maybe some arsenic got into the southern wells too, but Martha's voice broke. He's asking for you, says he needs to make things right before he dies. Cole was already moving toward the horses. It's a trap. It might not be, Lila said, but her voice wavered. If he really is sick, then it's a trap using your conscience as bait. Cole's expression was iron. Grant knows you'll come if you think your father's dying. Knows you're not hard enough to let him die alone even after everything he did. So what do I do? Let him die without... You stay here where it's safe. I'll go check on him. Bring back word if he's really sick. No. Lila's voice was firm. If it's a trap, they'll expect me. You going instead puts you in danger. And if it's not a trap, if my father really is dying, then I need to be the one who goes. Martha looked between them, confused and frightened. Please, Miss Hart. He's bad. Real bad. Cole's hands clenched into fists. Then we both go, armed, alert, and at the first sign of trouble, we run. They rode into Dry Creek as the sun touched the horizon, painting everything gold and red. The town felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still, like it was holding its breath. Martha led them to the boarding house where Ray Hart had taken a room, cheap and sparse, smelling of sickness and sweat. Lila's father lay on a narrow cot, his skin gray-green, his body racked with tremors. A bucket beside the bed was half full of bile. The doctor, an older man Lila vaguely recognized, stood by the window, his face grave. Miss Hart, the doctor said. Thank you for coming. Your father's been asking for you. Lila approached the cot slowly. Up close, Ray looked worse, sunken cheeks, cracked lips, eyes that couldn't quite focus. This wasn't faking. This was real sickness, the kind that killed if it went too long. "Papa," she said softly. Ray's eyes found her and tears leaked down his temples. "Lila, my girl, I'm sorry, so sorry. I tried to stay sober like I promised, but—" He retched, his whole body convulsing. The doctor moved in with practiced efficiency, helping Ray through the spasm. When it passed, the old man looked exhausted unto death. "Is it the water?" Cole asked from the doorway, his hand near his rifle. "I don't think so. The southern wells tested clean." The doctor wiped Ray's face with a damp cloth. "But this looks like poisoning nonetheless. Arsenic, specifically, but a heavier dose than what was in the spring." Lila's mind raced. Someone poisoned him deliberately? Or he poisoned himself? The doctor's voice was carefully neutral. "Arsenic's not hard to come by, and a man feeling guilty enough, desperate enough—" "No." Lila looked at her father's wasted face. "He wouldn't. He was trying. He was—" "The bottle's on the table," the doctor said quietly. Lila turned. There, half hidden behind the wash basin, was a small brown bottle. The label read tonic for digestive ailments. But when Lila picked it up, unstoppered it, the smell was wrong, bitter and chemical. "Someone gave him this?" she said. "Told him it was medicine, and—" The door slammed open. Grant Harlow stood there, and he wasn't alone. Jake Calloway and two men Lila didn't recognize flanked him, all armed, all blocking the only exit. Grant's smile was fever-bright, triumphant. "Surprise," he said. Cole's rifle came up, but Grant was faster. He had a pistol pressed to Martha Chen's head. When had he grabbed her? And his finger was white on the trigger. "Drop it, Maddox, or the old woman gets her brains on the wall." Martha whimpered. Cole's jaw clenched, but he lowered the rifle slowly. "Good monster. Now kick it away." Cole did. The weapon skittered across the floor, out of reach. Grant shoved Martha toward the doctor. "Get out, both of you. This is between me and them." "You can't—" the doctor started. "I said get out!" Grant's voice cracked like a whip. "Or I start shooting everyone in this room and let the law sort it out." The doctor and Martha fled. Their footsteps echoed down the hall, and then there was silence except for Ray Hart's labored breathing. Grant closed the door, locked it, pocketed the key. "Now," he said pleasantly, "we're going to have a conversation about respect, about consequences, about what happens when jokes don't stay dead like they're supposed to." Lila felt Cole shift beside her, calculating angles, distances, odds. But they were outnumbered and outgunned, and Grant knew it. "You poisoned my father," Lila said, keeping her voice steady. "I gave him medicine. Not my fault if it disagreed with him." Grant's smile was terrible. "Thought it would be poetic, you know. Him dying from the same poison I tried to use on the town. Full circle. And the best part?" He laughed. "Everyone will think he did it himself. Guilty drunk couldn't live with his shame, poisoned himself for penance. Tragic, predictable. The sheriff will know it was you. The sheriff will suspect, but he can't prove it, just like he couldn't prove I set your barn on fire, or cut your fences, or any of the other things I did." Grant moved closer, his pistol now trained on Cole. "See, that's what you never understood, Lila. Money buys more than things. It buys silence. It buys witnesses who forget what they saw. It buys judges who set reasonable bail. It won't buy your freedom after you kill us," Cole said. "Who said anything about killing you?" Grant's expression was almost innocent. "I'm just here to deliver a message. You two leave the county, tonight. Sell the ranch, pack your things, disappear. And maybe I'll let your father live long enough to see a real doctor." On the cot, Ray made a sound, protest or agreement. It was impossible to tell. "And if we refuse?" Lila asked. Grant shrugged. "Then your father dies tonight. And tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that, there'll be another accident, another fire, another contamination. I'll make your lives so miserable, so dangerous, that you'll wish you'd taken my generous offer." "You're insane," Cole said flatly. "I'm determined. There's a difference." Grant checked his pocket watch. "You've got until midnight to decide. Stay and fight, or run and live. Your choice. He moved toward the door, his men backing up with him, weapons still trained on Cole and Lila. Oh, and don't try following me. My father's men are watching. You leave this room before midnight and someone you care about dies. Maybe the doctor. Maybe Martha. Maybe some random kid on the street. His smile widened. I'm not picky about collateral damage anymore. The lock clicked. Footsteps receded, then silence. Lila ran to her father's side. Papa, can you hear me? Ray's eyes fluttered open. Baby girl, he whispered. Don't let him win. Whatever he... A cough racked him. You're stronger. You're so much stronger. Save your strength. We'll get you a real doctor. We'll... No time. Ray's hand found hers, his grip weak but desperate. I wasted my life. Wasted yours. But you survived me. Survived all of us. His eyes were clear now, fever bright but focused. Be free, Lila. Don't let my mistakes be your cage. Papa. But Ray was fading, his breathing shallow, his pulse thready under her fingers. Cole was at the window, checking sightlines. He's got men on the rooftops, at least 3 I can see. We're pinned. My father's dying. I know. Cole's voice was gentle. But if we run for help now, Grant's people start shooting. We have to wait, have to play this smart. Lila looked at the locked door, the window with its watchers, her father's failing body. They were trapped, outmaneuvered. Grant had backed them into a corner where every choice led to death or surrender. But Lila Hart hadn't survived this long by accepting the choices men gave her. There's another way, she said slowly. Cole turned. What are you thinking? Grant wants us scared, wants us running, expects us to either give up the ranch or watch my father die. Lila's mind was racing, pieces clicking together. But there's a third option, which is, we give him what he wants. Lila met Cole's eyes. We agree to leave, sign papers, pack bags, make it look real. But instead of running, we set a trap, Cole finished, understanding dawning. Use his arrogance against him. Exactly. He thinks he's won, thinks we're broken. That makes him careless. They spent the next hour planning in whispers while Ray Hart drifted in and out of consciousness. It was risky, possibly suicidal. But it was better than surrender, better than running, better than letting Grant Harlow continue terrorizing people because his pride was wounded. When midnight came, Cole opened the window and called to Grant's men. We agree. We'll leave. But we need a doctor for Hart first. After that, we'll sign whatever papers you want. The answer came back. Get a doctor? You have until dawn to be gone. They sent for Doc Wilson, the only physician in Dry Creek who Grant hadn't bought. The old man came quickly, asked no questions, and went to work on Ray with quiet competence. Activated charcoal to absorb the poison, fluids to flush his system, prayers for what medicine couldn't fix. He might make it, Wilson said finally, or he might not. The next 12 hours will tell. Thank you, Lila said. Don't thank me. Just live. The doctor packed his bag. And whatever you're planning, be careful. Grant Harlow's more dangerous now than he's ever been. After he left, Lila sat with her father while Cole kept watch. Ray's breathing had steadied slightly, his color less gray. Not out of danger, but not actively dying. It was the best they could hope for. I meant what I said, Ray whispered suddenly. Be free. Don't let any of us hold you back. I won't, Lila promised. But you're not dying tonight. You're going to live and get sober and figure out how to be the man Mama believed you could be. Ray's smile was weak but real. Bossy, just like her. Good. Dawn came gray and cold. Lila and Cole emerged from the boarding house, their faces showing exactly the right amount of defeat. Cole carried their saddlebags, empty, but Grant's men didn't know that. Lila walked with her shoulders slumped, her eyes down, the perfect picture of surrender. Grant was waiting in the street, his smile victorious. Smart choice. I knew you'd see reason eventually. We're leaving, Cole said flatly. But first we need to make arrangements for the ranch, transfer papers, bank documents. Can't just walk away from property. I'm not stupid, Maddox. You'll sign the ranch over to me as payment for damages, Emotional trauma, you understand, and then you'll disappear. Fine, but the paperwork's at the ranch, and the banker needs to witness the transfer for it to be legal. Grant's eyes narrowed. This better not be a trick. It's not. Lila's voice was hollow, defeated. We just want this over. Want to leave with our lives. Grant studied them for a long moment, looking for deception. But Lila had learned from years of hiding her true self from people who wanted to hurt her. Her face showed him exactly what he wanted to see. A broken girl who'd finally accepted her place. All right, he said. We ride to Ridgefire, but my men come too. And if I see anything suspicious, anything at all, I start shooting. They rode out of town with an audience. People lining the streets, watching the monster and the skeleton leave town in shame. Some looked satisfied. Others looked uncomfortable, like they knew this wasn't justice, but couldn't figure out how to stop it. Lila didn't look at any of them. She kept her eyes forward, her posture defeated, her mind racing through the plan. Everything depended on timing, on Grant's arrogance, on the belief that he'd finally won. Ridgefire Ranch appeared through the morning haze, and Lila felt her heart clench. This place that had become home, this sanctuary built from kindness and hard work. She wasn't giving it up. Not to Grant, not to anyone. But first they had to survive what came next. They dismounted in the ranch yard, and Grant's men immediately spread out. 2 watching the barn, 2 covering the house, Jake positioned near the horses. Grant himself stayed close to Lila and Cole, his pistol visible in his belt, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. The papers are in the house, Cole said. Office in the back. Give me 10 minutes to gather everything. We all go together, Grant interrupted. I'm not letting you out of my sight. Cole shrugged like it didn't matter, like he'd expected it. They walked toward the house, and Lila felt every muscle in her body coiled tight, waiting. The plan required precision, required Grant to be exactly where they needed him, exactly when they needed him there. The office was small, a desk, filing cabinet, window facing east. Cole moved to the cabinet, started pulling out papers with hands that looked steady, but Lila could see the tension in his shoulders. Grant stood in the doorway, blocking the exit, his men visible through the window behind him. Deed to the property, Cole said, laying papers on the desk. Bill of sale for the livestock. Transfer documents for the water rights. Each paper placed carefully, deliberately. Grant picked up the deed, scanned it. This says the property's in both your names, Maddox and Hart. Partnership, Cole said flatly. Legal as of 2 weeks ago. Cute, doesn't matter, you'll both sign it over. Grant pulled a document from his own pocket. I took the liberty of having my father's lawyer draw up the transfer. Just needs your signatures and a witness. Where's the banker? Lila asked. Coming. Should be here any... Grant stopped, cocked his head. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses, approaching fast. Grant's smile widened. Right on time. But when the riders came into view through the window, Grant's smile died. It wasn't the banker. It was Sheriff Callahan with 8 armed deputies, and they were moving with purpose. You set me up, Grant snarled, his hand going to his pistol. No, Lila said calmly. We gave you exactly what you asked for. You just assumed we'd do it alone. Grant's face twisted with rage. He drew his weapon, but Cole was already moving, faster than a man his size should move, closing the distance, his hand clamping around Grant's wrist like a vice. The pistol went off, the bullet punching into the ceiling, and then they were grappling, 2 big men locked together in the small space. Lila ran for the window, threw it open. In here! He's in here! Outside, chaos erupted. Grant's men were drawing weapons, but they were outnumbered and surrounded. The deputies moved with practiced efficiency. 2 shots fired, both warning shots, and then Jake was on the ground with his hands up, the others following suit. Inside the office, Cole had Grant pinned against the desk, the pistol on the floor, Grant's face purple with fury and oxygen deprivation. It's over, Cole said through gritted teeth. Stop fighting. Never, Grant hissed. I'll kill you. I'll kill her. I'll burn this whole county down before I let you win. The sheriff burst through the door, 2 deputies behind him. Cole, let him go. We've got this. Cole released Grant slowly, and the deputies moved in immediately, yanking Grant's arms behind his back, slapping iron cuffs on his wrists. Grant fought like a rabid animal, screaming obscenities and threats, but 4 men held him secure. "Grant Harlow," Sheriff Callahan said formally, "you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, poisoning, extortion, and violation of bail conditions. Anything you say can and will be used against you." "You can't prove anything," Grant spat. "My father's lawyers will—" "Your father's lawyers are currently being questioned about their role in helping you violate bail," Callahan interrupted. "Seems old man Harlow decided his son's life wasn't worth his reputation after all. He's the one who sent word you'd left the estate. He's the one who told us to check Ridgefire Ranch." The color drained from Grant's face. "My father wouldn't—" "Your father's a businessman, and you became bad for business the moment you tried to poison the water supply." The sheriff nodded to his deputies. "Get him out of here. Cell with the good lock this time." They dragged Grant away, his voice echoing across the ranch as he screamed threats and denials and promises of revenge that sounded increasingly desperate and hollow. When the noise finally faded, Lila found herself shaking, not from fear, from relief so profound it threatened to buckle her knees. Cole's hand found her shoulder, steadying her. "You all right?" "I think so." Lila looked at the sheriff. "How did you know to come?" "Doc Wilson said you two looked like people planning something stupid and brave, and he figured you could use backup." Callahan smiled slightly. "Also, Martha Chen came to me first thing this morning, said Grant threatened to kill her if she told anyone what happened. That violated his bail conditions right there. But we wanted to catch him in the act of something bigger, so we waited, followed his men here." "My father," Lila said suddenly. "Is he—" "Doc says he'll pull through. The poison wasn't as concentrated as we thought, and they got to him fast enough. He'll be weak for a while, but he'll live." The relief nearly undid her. Lila pressed her hands to her face, feeling tears leak between her fingers. Not sad tears, but the kind that came when your body finally believed the danger was really over. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me. You two did the hard part." Callahan looked around the office, at the scattered papers, the bullet hole in the ceiling. "Though maybe next time you could try not being bait for armed criminals?" Cole's laugh was rough. "We'll take that under advisement." The sheriff left with his prisoners, and suddenly the ranch was quiet again. Peaceful. The morning sun slanted through the windows, painting everything gold, and Lila realized she was still alive, still standing, still here in this place that had become home. "We should check on the horses," Cole said. "Make sure Grant's men didn't hurt them." They walked to the barn together, and everything was fine. The horses calm, Ruby nickering a greeting when she saw Lila. The familiar routine of checking each animal, running hands over legs and backs looking for injury, settled something in Lila's chest. This was real. This was hers. No one could take it anymore. "I can't believe it's actually over," she said, leaning against Ruby's stall. "It's not," Cole said. "Not completely. There's still the trial. Still people in town who'll think you don't belong here. Still your father's recovery to manage." "I know, but the worst of it, Grant and his poison and his threats, that's done." "Yeah." Cole was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do about your father?" Lila had been thinking about that. "Let him recover, see if his sobriety holds when he's not facing death. If it does, if he really changes, then maybe we can build something. Not the relationship we should have had, but something honest, something real. And if he doesn't change, then I'll know I tried. That's all I can control, my own choices, my own conscience." Lila stroked Ruby's neck, feeling the mare's warm strength under her palm. "I spent too many years carrying other people's failures. I'm done with that." They worked through the morning, and around noon a wagon arrived from town. Lila didn't recognize the driver, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and work-worn hands. "Miss Hart? I'm Vivian Lane. I was—" She paused, seemed to gather courage. "I was Cole's wife's sister, Sarah's sister." The name hung in the air. Cole had mentioned his wife so rarely that Lila had almost forgotten she'd existed, that this ranch had once held a marriage cut short by disease and bad luck. Cole stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Vivian? It's been a long time." 7 years. Vivian's voice was thick with old grief. I stayed away because I blamed you for Sarah dying, for not being here when she got sick, for surviving when she didn't. Tears tracked down her face. But I was wrong. I was angry and hurting, and I made you into a monster because it was easier than accepting that sometimes terrible things just happen. Cole's jaw was tight. You had every right to be angry. Maybe, but not at you. Vivian wiped her eyes. I heard what happened, with Grant and the poisoning and everything you two did to stop it, and I realized Sarah would have been proud of you, of what you've built here, of how you helped Miss Hart when everyone else treated her like trash. She turned to Lila then. I owe you an apology too. I was one of the people who laughed when Grant sent you out here. Thought it was funny, thought you deserved it for being different. I was cruel because it was easy, and I'm ashamed of that. Lila studied this woman who'd hurt her, who was now trying to make amends. She could reject the apology, hold on to the grudge, make Vivian suffer the way she'd suffered. But what would that accomplish? I accept your apology, Lila said quietly. And I hope you find peace with your sister's death. It wasn't Cole's fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. Vivian nodded, new tears falling. Thank you. Both of you. She returned to the wagon, pulled out a covered basket. I brought food. Thought you might need a proper meal after everything. And inside the basket was a feast. Roasted chicken, fresh bread, apple pie, preserves. The kind of meal that took time and care to prepare. A peace offering wrapped in cloth and kindness. Stay for lunch, Cole said, surprising both women. If you want, we can talk about Sarah, about the good times before everything went wrong. So Vivian stayed, and they ate on the porch while she told stories about Sarah, her laugh, her stubbornness, her terrible cooking, and beautiful singing. Cole listened with a face like carved stone, but Lila could see the pain and relief warring in his expression. He'd carried Sarah's death alone for 7 years, and now someone who'd loved her too was helping shoulder the weight. When Vivian finally left, promising to visit again, Cole stood on the porch, watching her wagon disappear down the road. Thank you, he said without looking at Lila. For what? For being kind to her. You could have been cruel. You would have had the right. Cruelty's easy, Lila said. Kindness, real kindness, not the performance kind, that takes strength. And I'm tired of choosing easy. The days that followed felt almost dreamlike in their normalcy. They worked the ranch, tended the horses, repaired the scorched barn wall. Word came from town that Grant's trial had been moved up. The judge wanted him dealt with before he could cause more damage. Jonah Pike was testifying, along with Jake and Tom, who'd both turned witness in exchange for reduced sentences. The case was airtight. Lila's father improved slowly. Doc Wilson brought him to the ranch after a week, thin and shaky but sober, his eyes clear for the first time in years. He didn't ask to stay, didn't make demands, just thanked them for saving his life, and asked if there was work he could do to earn his keep. Fences need mending, Cole said after a long pause. And the chicken coop could use rebuilding. You do good work, honest work, and we'll talk about wages. Laura Ray's eyes filled with tears. I won't let you down. Don't make promises, Lila said. Just show up every day and do the work. That's all we need. He did. Every morning, Ray arrived at dawn, worked until his weakened body gave out, then rested and came back the next day. He didn't drink, didn't complain, didn't ask Lila for forgiveness or make grand speeches about change. He just worked, steady and quiet, letting his actions speak louder than words ever could. 2 weeks after Grant's arrest, Sheriff Callahan rode out again. This time, his face held good news. Trial's done. Jury took 3 hours to convict on all counts. Judge sentenced him to 20 years hard labor, no possibility of parole. Callahan dismounted, accepted the coffee Lila offered. Old man Harlow didn't even show up, disowned Grant publicly, said his son was no longer part of the family. 20 years, Lila repeated. She'd expected to feel triumphant, but instead she just felt tired. Is that enough? For attempted mass murder? Probably not. But it's what the law allows. The sheriff sipped his coffee. He'll serve it at the territorial prison in Huntsville. Far enough away that he can't cause trouble here anymore. What about Jake and Tom? 5 years each, out in 3 with good behavior. They cooperated, showed genuine remorse. Callahan's expression was thoughtful. Sometimes people do terrible things because they're following someone they shouldn't. Doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. After the sheriff left, Lila walked out to the pasture where Ruby grazed. The mare came to her immediately, pushing her soft nose into Lila's palm, and Lila felt something unknot in her chest. She'd spent so much of her life afraid of being hurt, afraid of being hungry, afraid of not being enough. But standing here, on land she co-owned, with a horse she'd saved, and a partnership built on mutual respect, she realized the fear had lost its teeth. She wasn't the breakable girl anymore. Maybe she never had been. Cole found her there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. "Thinking?" he asked. "Remembering," Lila corrected. "The girl who walked out here 7 weeks ago. How desperate she was. How broken." "You were never broken. Just bent under weight that wasn't yours to carry." "Maybe," Lila smiled, "but I'm not bent anymore. And the weight, I learned to carry it different, distribute it between 2 people instead of 1. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then, "I've been thinking about expanding. There's good grazing land to the east, and if we bought it, we could double our herd. Maybe start breeding Ruby. Her bloodline's too good not to pass on." "That's a lot of work." "It is, but we're good at work." He looked at her sidelong. "Partners?" Lila extended her hand. "Partners." They shook on it, and the handshake turned into something else. Cole pulling her close, his scarred face gentle, his arms solid and safe around her. It wasn't romance, not yet. Maybe it would never be. But it was partnership and friendship and the bone-deep knowledge that they'd fight for each other when the world turned cruel. That was enough. More than enough. The weeks turned into months, and Ridgefire Ranch flourished. Ray stayed sober, worked hard, and slowly began earning back fragments of his daughter's trust. Not forgiveness. Lila was clear about that. But the possibility of something better built on honest foundation. Vivian visited regularly, bringing news from town and slowly becoming something like a friend. She helped Lila plant a vegetable garden, taught her to preserve food for winter, shared recipes and stories, and the comfortable silence that came from women who understood each other's scars. The town's attitude shifted too. People who'd laughed at Lila now nodded respect when she came for supplies. The seamstress who'd worked her to exhaustion quietly closed her shop, unable to compete with her own reputation for cruelty. The boarding house lost tenants as word spread about how they'd treated the woman who'd saved the water supply. Dry Creek was learning a hard lesson, that the people you dismiss and destroy might be the ones you need most when disaster comes calling. 6 months after Grant's conviction, Lila received a letter. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the return address from Huntsville Prison. Her hands shook as she opened it. "Miss Hart," it read. "You don't know me, but I'm the chaplain at the Territorial Prison. I'm writing because one of our inmates, Grant Harlow, has requested I contact you. He's been undergoing counseling and spiritual reflection, and he's asked if you would be willing to read a letter from him. I've reviewed the letter. It contains an apology and an attempt at making amends. You are under no obligation to read it, of course, but I wanted to give you the option. The letter is enclosed if you choose to accept it." Lila stared at the second envelope, still sealed, Grant's handwriting stark across the front. Cole was fixing a fence nearby. She walked over, showed him the letters. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know." Lila turned the envelope over in her hands. "Part of me wants to burn it. Part of me is curious what he could possibly say." "It's your choice." No wrong answer. Lila thought about it for a long moment. Then she walked to the fire pit, struck a match, and held the envelope over the flame. She watched it catch, watched the paper blacken and curl, watched Grant's words turn to ash without ever being read. "I don't need his apology," she said. "I don't need his amends or his spiritual awakening or whatever he thinks will make this right. What I needed was for him to stop, to be stopped, to face consequences. And he did. That's enough closure for me." She let the ashes scatter in the wind and felt lighter for it. That evening, she and Cole sat on the porch as they did most nights, drinking coffee and watching the stars come out. Ruby grazed in the near pasture, healthy and strong. The barn stood solid, the scorched wall now just another part of the ranch's history. Everything was quiet, peaceful, exactly as it should be. "Do you ever miss it?" Cole asked. "Your old life, the sewing, the town, the familiar routine?" Lila laughed. "Not even a little. That life was killing me slowly. This?" She gestured at the ranch, the horses, the vast Texas sky. "This is living. Even with all the hard work, the danger, the fact that half the county still doesn't quite trust you, especially because of those things. Hard work that matters is better than easy work that destroys you. Danger you choose is better than safety that suffocates. And people who don't trust me," Lila shrugged. "That's their problem, not mine." Cole smiled, the scars on his face catching the lamplight. "You've changed since you first got here. So have you. You laugh now. You let people visit. You don't hide anymore. Neither do you." It was true. Lila had stopped making herself small, stopped apologizing for existing, stopped carrying everyone else's shame and guilt and expectations. She took up space now, in conversation, in decisions, in the simple act of believing she deserved to be here. "What do you think happens next?" she asked. "We work. We build. We make this ranch into something that lasts." Cole paused. "And maybe, if you're willing, we become more than partners in business." Lila's heart kicked against her ribs. She looked at Cole, this man who'd given her water when he could have turned her away, who'd taught her that scars proved survival rather than weakness, who'd fought beside her against poison and pride and a town's casual cruelty. "Maybe," she said softly. "When we're both ready, when we've healed enough to build something new instead of just surviving what came before." "I can wait," Cole said. "I'm good at waiting." They sat in comfortable silence while the night deepened around them, and Lila felt a contentment she'd never known before settling into her bones. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would still be hard days, difficult choices, people who wished them harm. Her father might drink again. The town might turn cruel. The ranch might fail despite their best efforts. But she would face all of it standing tall, working alongside someone who saw her strength instead of her fragility, building a life on honest foundation instead of desperate survival. A year after that terrible summer day when Grant had sent her to die, Lila stood in front of the small church in Dry Creek wearing a dress she'd sewn herself. Simple white cotton with embroidery at the collar. Nothing fancy, but made with care and skill. Her father stood beside her, thin but sober, his eyes wet with pride and regret and hope. "You look beautiful," Ray said. "Just like your mother." "Thank you, Papa." "Lila..." He stopped, swallowed hard. "I know I don't deserve to walk you down this aisle. I know I wasted my right to this moment years ago, but I'm grateful, so grateful, that you're giving me the chance anyway." "You're sober," Lila said simply. "You've stayed sober for 10 months. You've worked hard. You've never once asked me for money or made excuses. That earned you this moment." The church door opened and music drifted out. Simple piano, nothing elaborate, but sweet and clear. Lila took her father's arm, and they walked forward together. The church was small, the gathering smaller. Sheriff Callahan and his wife. Doc Wilson. Vivian and her family. Jonah Pike, clean-shaven and employed now as a deputy, his debt to society paid. A handful of townspeople who'd proven themselves kind instead of cruel. And at the front, waiting with the minister, stood Cole Maddox. He wore his best shirt and a string tie, his hair neatly combed, his scarred face solemn and handsome in the afternoon light. When he saw Lila, something in his expression softened, transformed, became something close to wonder. Lila walked down the aisle, feeling not nervous, but certain. This was right. This was earned. Not a rescue or a consolation prize, but a partnership between equals who'd proven themselves in fire and poison and the harder work of choosing kindness over cruelty. Her father placed her hand in Cole's, then stepped back. The minister began speaking about love and commitment and building lives together, but Lila barely heard the words. She was looking at Cole, and he was looking at her, and the understanding between them needed no translation. They'd survived. They'd fought. They'd won. And now they were choosing each other, not because they needed rescuing, but because they'd built something worth keeping. "I do," Cole said when the moment came. I do, Lila echoed. The kiss was gentle, careful, full of promise. The small congregation applauded, and someone, probably Vivian, was crying happy tears. Outside, the Texas sun blazed overhead, and Ruby waited in the churchyard wearing ribbons in her mane, healthy and strong and beautiful. Lila ran her hand down the mare's neck, feeling the solid warmth of the horse who'd saved her in return. Ready to go home, Mrs. Maddox? Cole asked, offering his hand. Lila took it. I've been ready my whole life. They rode back to Ridgefire Ranch side by side, the wedding guests following in wagons, and the celebration that followed was simple but real. Food and music and laughter without cruelty underneath it. Toast to the future, stories about the past, the comfortable warmth of community built on respect instead of fear. As evening fell and guests began departing, Lila and Cole found themselves alone again on the porch they'd shared so many nights. The ranch spread around them, barn and pasture and bunkhouse and all the dreams they'd built together. No regrets? Cole asked. Lila thought about the girl she'd been. Hungry, frightened, convinced she was too weak to matter. Then she thought about the woman she'd become, strong enough to save horses and water supplies and herself, brave enough to choose partnership over safety, stubborn enough to believe she deserved happiness. Not a single one, she said. Somewhere in the pasture, Ruby called out, a sound of pure contentment. The other horses answered, their voices carrying across the cooling evening air. Stars began appearing overhead, scattered like salt across velvet, and Lila leaned against Cole's solid warmth, feeling more at home than she'd ever felt anywhere. This was what victory looked like, not loud or dramatic, but quiet and steady and real. A life built on honest work, mutual respect, and the revolutionary act of refusing to stay small when the world demanded it. Lila Maddox now, had walked 5 miles through killing heat to survive a joke. She'd faced down poison and bullets and a town's contempt. She'd saved lives, built partnerships, and discovered that the breakable girl everyone dismissed had been made of iron all along. And now, finally, she was free. Free to work. Free to love. Free to take up space without apology. Free to write her own story instead of living in the margins of someone else's cruelty. The Iron Girl of Dry Creek had become the Iron Woman of Ridgefire Ranch, and her story, their story, was just beginning. The end.